Hello and welcome to another TouchyGooners podcast. It's your boy Dankoogs on hosting duty today, back in the hosting seat after a long hiatus, but hopefully I should be back for the foreseeable future. Um, Great to be back. I'm joined today by SV Carbaholic himself, Sean. How are you doing, my man?
Yeah, all right, man. All good. It's nice not to be on the hosting chair today after the last few months. But yeah, no, all good, man.
Oh, good. So, if I need to dash out quickly, it's because my son's woken up and I need to put him back to bed. So, um, hopefully, it doesn't happen. It's not happened for the past few nights. So, I'm got my fingers crossed. But you know how things are. When you think things are running smoothly, kids they don't let it happen, right? So, we will see how that goes. But as I said, it feels good to be back. You know, Arsenal top of the league, through to the quarterfinals of the Champions League as well. So things are looking pretty rosy. We weren't playing on the weekend. We got to, sort of drink in the blood of our enemies, kind of. Man United went through, but they dunked on Liverpool last minute. I'm seeing Dysonomics running around like Park because his boy Ahmad scored the winner and all of this stuff. So it was almost bittersweet being an observer. I thought I had something there with Mavadidi, cooking gusto, curled finish into the far corner. I had some Halen's finest that I was ready to dash, but unfortunately Chelsea went through. But before we get into this week's pod, some minor housekeeping. Obviously it's international break, but that doesn't mean the TG content stops. We will be pushing out a couple of Patreon pieces over this international break. There was one already that Sean recorded with Lewis earlier this week, just talking about the breakdown of the Champions League, how we feel about the draw, etc. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you go and do that. If you're not subscribed to the Patreon, you're missing out on some extra content. We will be doing some scouting pieces on a couple of players that we're linked with. We're going to try and push out as many of those as possible. So, us TG guys, we like to look at the tapes, and we will always be doing that for anyone that we are linked with before we head into this summer. And you can sign up to the Patreon from as little as £3 a month. And if you're listening on Spotify, Apple, make sure you drop us a like, and make sure you drop us a review. All of that stuff really pushes the pod to new listeners, and that is how we can, get more content out to you guys, man. So it's a bit of a weird week. We didn't play on the weekend. There's a few Arsenal stories floating about. It is international football. I don't know about you, Sean, but I'm not the biggest fan of international football. I almost take this as a week off. I don't really watch England. I don't really watch Nigeria. I don't really watch any of the other games, to be honest. So, it's a weird one. But how do you feel about Arsenal right now?
Yeah, I'm like you. I'm not watching anything. I've just finished The Gentleman, binge watched that whole series. I know you're in the group telling me you're waiting for the missus to watch that with you. So yeah, I've not been
No
when it's
spoilers.
international. Yeah, no, no, don't worry, no spoilers, no spoilers. But good series, good series. Yeah, I love it. My missus is probably like, boy, you don't spend this much time with me when Arsenal are playing. But yeah, so this is a good time to make up the time where where Arsenal is consuming a lot of the stuff that's happening. So yeah, so just watching a lot of different TV shows and just enjoying. But now we feel good. We feel good. It's nice heading into this period. Basically April, where we still have loads of things to play for. And it's this is what we're talking about. We haven't been here in a while. This is exactly where we want to be back. So I'm really excited to be here. Nervous because I have a few concerns going into the running. But excited at the same time. Do you know what I mean? So this is a good example of how far we've come, and mentally it's going to be a challenge, but let's see if these guys can rise to it. I think they need to, personally, because I don't think we've ended seasons well under Arteta. If I'm to be totally honest, a lot of seasons I don't think we've ended well under Arteta. Now that's probably down to a couple of factors: lack of experience, key injuries to personnel going down. But I feel like to an extent played this season in the right sort of way. We didn't start like we did last season, like on fire and fizzle out. It's been a slow build, and since January we've really ramped up in terms of the performances, in terms of the level we're operating at. So what we've seen from January till now, so for the last 3 months, basically, I just hope we can finish the last 2 months at this level. Obviously, it will be tough with the fixtures we have, and it's not necessarily, I think, the fixtures that worry me. It's more that volume of high pressure game back to back to back to back to back every 3 days. Like even they call this like playoff season, innit? Do you know what I mean? Because everyone you're playing essentially has something to play for. So we play like City, and then 3 days later we play like Luton, who are battling relegation. Two extremes, but both will be high intensity. And then I think we've got like Brighton away battling for Europe, Villa battling for Europe. So I think every game has the high stakes on it. And then when you fit the Champions League games in and around that, yeah, man, every game is a high pressure, intense game. So I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how the coach manages this period. Sometimes we've spoken about that ability to manage the squad. I think everyone virtually is fit now. Obviously Martinelli and Timber weren't in the last squad, but hopefully they'll be back for Man City. So I think for us, it's about how we manage the pressure as well as how Arteta manages the squad to go into the run-in. So I think that's really important. I think he's spoken previously about what do you need going into the run-in. He said everyone fit. So virtually everyone is fit. So let's see how you handle this period. I think this is key, both for the players and for the manager.
Yeah, I think you make some really, really good points there, about how we have finished the season. And, partly some of that is injury, and I think we have been quite fortunate so far, touch wood. I want to make sure I'm not jinxing anything, that some of our key players haven't been injured. I think, you look at the likes of Saka, you look at Declan Rice, you look at the two centre backs, you look at the keeper, you look at Ben White. They have been sort of real constants for us coming into this final part of the season. And it seems now that rather than us losing players, we're sort of set up quite perfectly here that some of these guys who have been missing, your Zinchenko, your Declan Rice, your Thomas Partey, sorry, your Emil Smith-Rowe, your Fabio Vieira's, your Gabriel Jesus, your Takehiro Tomiyasu, etc. They seem to be coming back to full fitness at a time when they can really contribute with that fixture pile-up. Because you see, probably the worst spell that we had this season was in that Christmas period. We lost 2 games back to back, and that was where we had to play a couple of guys, probably more than we would have liked to during that period. And so I think looking at this, one thing that I thought quite interesting was that ordinarily we see Man City, we see Liverpool players drop like flies when it comes to this international break. And I'm seeing a couple of, players drop for us. Gabriel Magalhaes, Big Gabby, he pulled out of the Brazil squad. Gabriel Jesus not gone with Brazil. Gabriel Martinelli not gone with Brazil. Tomiyasu has not gone with Japan. So how do you Thomas Partey not gone with Ghana either? So how do you feel now that it seems that we're sort of controlling our destiny a little bit more when it comes to these internationals, and maybe putting our foot down around the fitness of some of these guys? Because I think we did it in January a little bit with Thomas Partey saying, "Oh no, he's not going to AFCON," etc. So how do you feel now that we seems to be throwing out our weight around a little bit?
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important. Firstly, these March internationals are the height of stupidity, right? We're playing 2 pointless international games in the business end of the season, which is just unnecessary. When you factor in the fixtures that we have remaining, I think in April we've got 9 games alone. So in an ideal world, Saka and Declan Rice really don't need pointless minutes in international friendlies prior to this heavy running that we're going to have. So, and when you look back, right, Fergie, I think, was always the master of this. He was always the master of, this guy had a miraculous injury, but come crunch time, they were available for United to play the running. So I feel like, I hope, based on what we're seeing and what we're hearing, that we're becoming a bit more savvy. And that we'll be able to manage that process in crunch time. And so, yeah, the main thing is everyone fresh, fit and raring to go. And to your point about some of these key injured guys that we speak about on a regular, so it's time for them to contribute. Do you know what I mean? Because I think there are certain players in the team that have done a lot of heavy lifting this season. So I speak about the two centre backs, Ben White, Rice, Saka, Erdegaard. I think those guys have done a lot of heavy lifting throughout the season. So it's incumbent on the rest of the squad to come and rise up and, you know, take some of the responsibility, man. So obviously we want our key players to be able to perform as well, but it's a 25-man squad for a reason, man. So, you know, when you think back to crunch time, like City always had different people propping up for them. United always had different people propping up for them, man. So it's important that some of these guys, and I'm looking at, you know, the likes of Jesus, Partey, Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, those guys have got to step up now for me. Critical.
Yeah, 100%. And it feels like for us to achieve our goals, we need some of those guys to really step up. So, you know, I think last season, Partey is ever present. You know, you want him starting every game. Zinchenko, similar. Tomiyasu, that's someone who you would want to be able to rely on in big games. Gabriel Jesus, you know, he sort of really lifted up that attack from, you know, the likes of Lacazette and Eddie and Aubameyang in his last years and stuff like that with some energy. And so it feels like those four guys, especially, I think, are going to be really key. So if you're looking at, you know, I don't think we're going to be able to do these last few games with a bare 11. It's going to need to be, you know, 15, 16, 17 guys that can come in, start games, whether that's in rotation, come in for the last 30 minutes, be, you know, what was that phrase that's going around, you know, finishers for the club, you know. So, you know, Zinchenko's not starting a game. All right, fine, we might need a goal, we can bring him on, or we might need to keep possession. We can bring him on. You know, you've already got the likes of Jorginho coming in to do that role. Or are we going to be playing a top winger like Jeremy Doku or a Mo Salah or something like that? Can we bring on Tomiyasu to come and do a lockdown job on them? You know, we're going to need high energy. We're going to need someone to finish the game and press from the front because Havertz is, you know, tired, or Jesus is tired. One of those guys can come on and give us another dynamic, you know. And I think Trossard has been doing that job quite a bit, filling in for Martinelli, filling in for Jesus. Havertz has done that job, playing striker, playing left centre mid. You would like to think that Vieira and Smith Rowe can also do something like that, maybe to a lesser extent. But I think we're going to need to rely on all of these guys if we want to be able to achieve, you know, the big things and deal with that fixture congestion. So completely agree with you that, you know, it's time for some of these guys to really contribute. And one name that I haven't mentioned is Jurgen Timber, right? So I think there were reports this week that he is expected to be back in squads at the end of an international break. So how do you see him being reintegrated into this team? Because, you know, if we look at the summer business, it's David Raya, it's Declan Rice, it's Kai Havertz. And, you know, I think there's definitely a lot more mixed opinions around Kai Havertz and David Raya as well when he came in. You know, those two guys not necessarily very popular with fans, and even just me speaking for myself, you know, not a fan of the Havertz signing. I thought the Raya signing was a bit confusing. Thought he's better keeping than Ramsdale, fine, but I wasn't necessarily too happy with the performances that we were getting from him earlier in the season. You think back to the Chelsea game where, you know, he gets lobbed by Mudryk, almost passes the ball into the net. Back to the Man City game where he makes a similar error to what Ramsdale did against Alvarez, but, you know, that one went wide and that could have been costly, etc. And so I look at these guys and their actual impact to our season now, and I think that all three of them have been big game changers. You know, I think I look at Declan Rice and his ability to eat up ground, press from the front, really back up that press, and really just munch people all over the pitch, you know, all action, winning the ball back, allowing us to play this high pressure game, and also filling in two positions in the 6 and the 8, and I think doing both to a very good degree. You look at Kai Havertz, what he's been giving us in terms of his energy and physicality, something that I didn't think he had in his game, being able to play direct to him. You know, you look at someone like that David Raya, who, you know, he's making these high claims. His distribution seems to be a lot more assured. His general temperament seems to be, you know, much calmer than someone like Ramsdale's really transformed the way that we are able to play both in and out of possession with him there. And so I look at Timber, and now I'm wondering, like, look, all three of these signings have been so impactful to where we are as a team. I look at Timber and I'm saying, what could this guy really bring, to him? And is there, an extra even layer that, we've not even comprehended because we've just not been able to see him on the pitch, So how do you think he could get integrated into this side? And do you expect him to play a big part from now to the end of the season?
It's so interesting, right? Because obviously with ACLs, you always want to be careful. You don't want to rush them back soon. But then on the flip side, and you saw what happened with Courtois, right? Who's just had another injury to an extent. So you want to be cautious, but at the same time, we've been seeing this guy pretty much train since Jan, right? So I think, from what some of the ITK say, they said this guy he's been banging on the door for a while asking to play. But I think it's good. And well of the coaching staff, we've had previous examples where maybe we might have brought someone back too early and they've relapsed, and so I think it's good to take our but to your point, I think he was brought as a critical key piece, man, and it's just a real shame we hadn't seen it. Both from pre-season, we saw him play left back, right back, both in pre-season. Obviously started the first game at left back. We know he can play centre back. We know he has that ability to play, to step into midfield as well, similar to what we've been seeing Ben White do recently. And I know you picked up a lot of the quality of what Havertz and Rice are brought off the ball, in particular with their physicality, their athleticism, their energy, which is probably slightly different to, the quality Xhaka and Partey gave us was a lot more on the ball stuff, but maybe they didn't have that same output out of possession as well. Whereas I think Timber, he was brought to sort of add to those dynamics, but I think he does contribute maybe a bit more on the ball just because he's got that ability, that jinky, that ability to, break lines either through passing or through dribbling as well. So I think that adds another layer, another dynamic, that ability to step in. So I think ultimately he was brought in to do, some similar stuff to what White can do on the right, some similar stuff to what Zinchenko can do on the left. He's a nice, healthy balance of athleticism and technical ability. And so someone made a good point, actually. I think, when we were linked previously with like Caicedo, and people were talking about him playing as an inverted right back, and obviously we've seen Arteta use Partey there. I could see Timber possibly being that sort of similar, same presence, that ability to come in from the right, that ability to carry, that ability to break lines as well, through different means as well. So I'm really excited by his potential. How much are we going to use him? That just depends on how much they're willing to take the risk now. Obviously, by all means, it sounds like he's ready, but how ready can you be if you're not match fit in it? Do you know what I mean? It's only going to be game. So at some point, we're going to have to start. I think City is probably not the game you want to do that, but maybe Luton 3 days later might be a game. Maybe if he doesn't start, he maybe gets like 30 minutes or so off the bench. But if we want him to play a critical part, bearing in mind, we're talking 10 league games here, we're going to have to start getting him involved sooner rather than later. I don't know. And probably maybe from a selfish standpoint, he might be looking at it and be like, right, the Euros is around the corner with Netherlands as well. If I want to play, I've got to start getting involved ASAP. So, but it calls down to the manager, and obviously Tomiyasu's back now as well. So let's see. I think it's got a selection headache, which is good for us, but it's good to have those options.
Yeah, for sure. And I think on your Courtois point, I see that Sven Botman has gone down with another ACL injury. I think in his other knee to the other one. So that is a very, very present issue. And if you look at Timber's style of play, he's doing bare jinkies and shoulder drops, and there's a lot of pressure going into them knees. So it's definitely one that you hope that the club does manage correctly. But I was watching a Timber comp yesterday before I went to bed, and it's like
serious player, man.
And it was just Arsenal clips from pre-season and up to Man City and Nottingham Forest, and I was like, "Rob, this guy's got this many, highlights." It was just like it was like a 6-minute video, but I was like, "Yeah, this guy, I think he can really, really add something." And one of the things that I did like is, he does have this on the ball quality, but from watching that Community Shield game, I really liked his defending as well. He was really aggressive, blocked crosses, which I think is probably a lost art of defending these days, that I really appreciated. So the quicker we can get this guy integrated and back to full fitness, the better I would feel around our defensive options, because we have been with the bare 4 players plus Cedric for the past, sort of 2 months or so since the Christmas period. So, it would be nice to see him back, and to talk about another sort of defensive contribution that we could have back is Tomiyasu, that we did mention before. So he's obviously signed a new contract, and I think myself and yourself, we've been on the same page a little bit about giving him a new contract, but the details of that came out today. And it looks like it's a 1-year extension from 25 to 26 with a 1-year option for him. And looking at that, I did feel a lot more relaxed about that new contract offer. And it's almost speaks to the business that the club has been able to do over the last 18 months in terms of retaining players values, etc. That I think needs to be commended, really, because looking at this with Tomiyasu, I could see a situation where he has a year left in summer and you don't really want to sell him because you like the player, and then he breaks down at some point next year, and now he's potentially injured. You don't have recourse to get any money for him, and he also can't contribute on the pitch. Whereas now, you increase his wages, which is obviously why he signed a new deal. You've extended that, and you have that further option, so that if in that eventuality that he does break down, you've then almost given yourself an extra 2 years on the end of that contract to still get some value from that player in selling them on the market. And it's giving you control of that situation of someone who has battled with injuries during his time at Arsenal. So I actually have to commend that as a good bit of business from the club, because to me, from the outside looking in, it was bemusing me that we were sort of giving this guy, doubling his wages, giving him a new contract, giving him a new deal when he's that unreliable. But I think it really speaks to the shift in how we look at contracts from maybe just even 5 years ago, when you're talking about Ramsey, Welbeck, Cazorla, Aubameyang, Socrates, Mustafi, and all of these guys leaving on free transfers, cancelling contracts left, right, and centre. So, how do you feel about that Tomiyasu contract situation?
Yeah, I think to your point, we have to commend Edu and the team, because I don't think we've got any key contracts expiring now before 2027, which is a good mark of the proactivity we've undergone since in the last few years. So all of our key personnel and key and star players are signed up to new deals. So I think that's good. I was with you. We were together on the Tomiyasu stuff. I've always been a bit just concerned about his availability. I feel like every season he misses minimum 2 months, and I get why he's liked, because he's a unique profile. It's very rare that you have someone who can play centre back, left back, right back, all to a very good level, is ambipedal, who does stuff to a good level. So I think that's good, but I think this contract is definitely a mark of we like you, but at the same time, it's now time for you to prove availability. And if you don't prove your availability, you give us a good opportunity, if you're not around, to get money, right? So because next season he'll be heading into his 4th season, so that he only signed a 4-year contract, I believe, when he first signed. So it's the opportunity, a 2+1. So I think that's good. It gives us leverage, both in case of if he does well, but also in case of if he goes down again and we decide that we want to rotate him. We've spoken earlier about some of the injury prone guys like him. I think it's vital that they perform. When we spoke about that right hand side, right? Saliba and Ben White have done a lot of heavy lifting, and they've had no rest. You remember some of those big wins that we had a few weeks back. We kept subbing Ben White off for Cedric, and we kept subbing him off because, listen, this guy can't go down, because none of the other guys are nowhere to be seen. So I think it's important now that these guys start sharing some of the load. And just to big up Tomiyasu, obviously, even though he does frustrate me with his injury nature, we know when he's at his best. We used to call him HMP Tomiyasu, right, because of that ability to lock down 1v1 defenders. And that might be a big case. Think of what's on the horizon with Bayern, right? Sané, Coman, Gnabry, Musiala, loads of tricky 1v1 guys who can create separation, who can X you out in isolation. So that's the sort of guy you want in those situations, right? So my thing is, hopefully he can just hold up you know, it's imperative. You know, you're not going to be needed every week, but for those key games where you are needed, we need you there, both to rest Ben White's legs, but to also come and do a specific job if necessary.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And he's obviously got a new deal that he signed last week. Arsenal obviously, rewarding him for his, good form. 2024 previous seasons, I think he's probably been one of our most reliable and consistent performers since he's joined the club. Both at centre back and right back. So I think that new contract is 100% fully deserved. But one of the things that came out today, so I know you guys spoke on this briefly last week with Southgate's comments about Ben White not joining the England team, and it seemed a bit of a, for me, I think before Southgate, sort of brought it up, or before he was asked about it, I should say, and then Arns chose to answer it in the way that he did, seemed like a bit of a non-story to me. I thought, a bit of a falling out, players not really getting on with the manager, doesn't really, feel like he's going to be one of the first guys in the team sheet, rather not play for England, right? Seemed like a bit of a non-story, but it seems now that, there's more rumblings and mumblings coming out. It looks like Steve Holland made a comment that rubbed Ben White and a few of the other players up the wrong way. They then had a further conversation about it, weren't able to see eye to eye. And then Ben White decided, you know what, I don't think this England stuff is for me. So now that you've seen sort of like further details on this, does this change your opinion from last week that, maybe Ben White shouldn't have, taken it in this way, or, maybe you feel even more entrenched that, he's done the right thing by leaving the camp?
Yeah, I mean, my personal actual opinion is that I don't give a heck. Like, I don't give a damn. It's Arsenal over England and Nigeria every single day of the week. So the fact that Ben White gets a couple of weeks rest is perfectly fine for me. I'm really, really happy with that. I think to the point, I mean, for the point of conversation, I always think, the video that came out, people were doing their diggings on Twitter about, when he first got the call up when he was at Brighton. I think back in 2021, he was talking about how excited and how happy he is to play. So I don't think this is someone who's just going to give up like overnight. Do you know what I mean? Unless something has happened. So obviously that there is an element of discourse, whatever, with Steve Holland and the coaching staff. Now I've seen some people say, "Oh, I should just man up. It is what it is. Like, you don't want to." But for me, imagine yourself in your place of work now. Someone scolds you or speaks to you in a certain way in front of a group of people. You're going to feel away. Like, I would never tolerate that or have that at work. So I think he's perfectly well within his rights either to address it there or take it the way he wanted to take it. Like, I know there's a big thing in England about, that the honor of playing for your country, and but just the level of discourse that I've seen TalkSport do like 20 different videos over it. I'm like, give it a rest. Like, do you know what I mean? Is it really that deep? Like, nearly a week on, they're still talking about it. So it doesn't bother me ultimately, as long as he's fit and available for Arsenal. But on the point, like, I think he's good enough to play for England. Like, do you know what I mean? So like, generally, people remember, obviously he's ultimately seen as a right back now, but prior to that, the first season, Ben White played very well at centre back next to Gabriel. Like, we shouldn't forget that Ben White could also be a very much. I don't think England have very good centre back options outside of John Stones. You could talk about maybe Colwill, Jared Brantwaite being some, good developmental options, but I think Ben White could perfectly play centre back if he really wanted him to, without an issue. So, let's not forget he's probably Saliba's first choice backup if Saliba would touch wood. Obviously, hopefully he doesn't, but was to go down. So, it is what it is, man. I think, what it is like, when it's international, people are just looking for stuff to talk about. So eventually, I think what England are playing tomorrow or Friday, they'll find a new topic of conversation. It's not that deep, man. So, but I'm happy with him, happy with the player, happy he's so committed to Arsenal. Like, this is someone we hear about. I think the Athletic broke it down. They were like, sometimes Arteta has to go to the to the physios, right, and be like, is Ben White okay? Is he concealing an injury? Because this guy will go through injury to play for Arsenal. So I don't think you could ever doubt this guy's commitment levels, in my opinion. And to your point, he's one of the most consistent performers. He's regularly available every week. Even if he's not fully fit, he will still play. So I always give Ben White a bit of grace, man. And I think he's been a very, very good signing for us, and long may it continue.
Yeah, Completely agree. Completely agree. I can see there's quite a few people listening at the moment. So if you're not following the TouchyGooners, make sure you do that. If you're watching on Twitter, you're watching on YouTube, make sure you follow TouchyGooners on all platforms at TouchyGooners. That's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok as well. We do push out quite a bit of content. So if you are enjoying the show, show us that support, show us that love. Make sure you retweet, make sure you share this, tell a friend to tell a friend, because we're here every single week talking about the club that we love. So, another point that came out this week actually was about Miles Lewis-Skelly, right? And him coming through and potentially playing inverted fullback on his integration in the first team. And I thought this was quite interesting because I think we've been linked to a left back. I think Ornstein, Fabrizio, and some of these more reputable guys have said that a left back is very much on the cards for us to sign. There's talk about Arsenal investing heavily into the youth system and this, that, and the other. And I thought this was a bit interesting because I do, keep my ear to the ground a little bit around the youth system and this, that, and the other. And we've got guys in a TG group chat who are, always telling us the ins and outs about this guy's coming through. Watch out for this guy. Watch out for that guy, etc., etc. And I thought this was quite an interesting development because I think we've seen him play left back a couple of times for the under 21s, for the under 18s, that kind of thing. And seeing the kind of profile that he is, you see the highlights floating around on Twitter. What do you think about that revelation that some of the coaching staff see him as a potential Zinchenko understudy doing that inverted left back stuff?
It's so interesting, man. Obviously, I got propaganda to push, so I've been seeing Kobe Manu been getting all the plaudits. Listen, I need my own Halen G to come through and start taking some of the shine. So Miles Lewis-Skelly and Ethan Nwaneri, who we have a lot of stocks in, I'm hoping over the next 18 months or so we see these guys fully integrated within the setup. So I really like him. He reminds me a lot of Moussa Dembele at Tottenham. That's what, like, when I see him, that's what I remind me of. Like, he's very powerful for like a 16, 17-year-old, has that ability to take it in tight spaces, turn, carry it under pressure. Now obviously, I just referenced Kobe Manu. Like, obviously that's probably where we were a few years ago, when we were baking off in eighth. That's why Saka and ESR and all those guys got their chances. It's probably a bit different now when you're trying to compete on multiple fronts. It's probably harder for these sort of guys to come and get these opportunities. But look, to the point you're mentioning, Saka made his breakthrough at left back before he got moved further forward. So there is, I guess, that potential. Is when you're looking to make your breakthrough, you just try and take your minutes wherever you can get them, right? And then hopefully you can start to grow and set in stone in what's your natural position. But I really like him. I really think he's got really interesting qualities. And yeah, I think he's a powerful runner with the ball. He has that. Technically, he's very, very nice. He's another one who can break lines via passing and dribbling. So maybe potentially it's something to see. He's very, very good technically. I'm not sure it's the best use of his attributes long term, but maybe as a bit of a grounding, it might be something to look at. You remember how Wenger always used to use, like, sometimes Wenger used to use strikers wide or centre mids wide. He said that hones their ability, hones their technique, playing out wide where they don't maybe sometimes have as many angles to work with, so that when they're back centrally, they're more comfortable and going either way. So it might be a similar thing Arteta's doing here. So we also saw Ainsley Maitland-Niles use that, both fullback positions as well. So it's an interesting one to see the developments, because obviously we've also been linked with, I believe, that Jarell Hato kid from Ajax, who is a centre back, but you can also play left back. So I saw, they were talking about, similar to how what Arteta envisaged for Lisandro Martinez when we wanted him, that might be how they see Jarell Hato. So I don't know. I think there's a lot open to interpretation here. I think my main thing is that I do think he's good enough. I do think him and Nwaneri are the talents that deserve that integration, and maybe, unfortunately, it might require the departures of a couple other Halen guys for them to start getting their opportunities. So you know how it works. So it's one to wait and see.
Yeah, and I think the sort of him and Ranieri being a similar age is an important factor into that decision as well, right? So I think Ranieri might be slightly ahead of Lewis-Skelly in the manager's thinking, and so maybe the way, because I'm looking at this, I think we're past sort of those early Emirates era years where you could literally play, a full 11 of Mark Randall, Aaron Ramsey, Jack Wilshere, Carlos Vela in the League Cup, and you'll slap a championship team 5-0 at the Emirates, right? You don't really see that anymore because the level of technique, the level of physicality, etc. I think the gap is closed quite a bit from some of those academy ballers to first team, where I think in previous generations those guys technically were so far clear of a lot of those championship League One ballers that they could really pop people off the pitch. But I think now, if you're talking about integrating these youngsters, you are having to sort of look at them in different positions, see if they can handle the physicality, see if they can, really tackle the intensity of men's football. And if you're, prioritizing one area as a midfielder, I don't think you can go to, away to, some of these championship teams or some of these, lower Premier League teams with a midfield of Lewis-Skelly and then Ranieri in there. But maybe you could have Ranieri coming into midfield from that left back position. Lewis-Skelly coming into midfield from that left back position, and having a Gabriel next to him, having a Declan Rice next to him to really protect him there in the centre of the park. So I do see that as an interesting development to bringing them both through into the first team setup, because I think what we've seen with Arteta, he's not necessarily the biggest fan of loaning some of these youngsters. Like the guys who have actually gone out on loan are guys that we've looked to move on. If you're looking at Balogun, I don't think we're going to see Brooke Norton-Cuffy come back to play significant minutes for the Arsenal first team. The jury's out on Charlie Patino, but the youngsters that he has rated and he has liked, your Smith Rose, your Saka, your Eddie Nketiah, he's almost stopped them from going out on loan and said, no, I want to work with you directly. And so, if you look at these two guys, if they're not going out on loan, then maybe that means, he thinks, right, there's something here to work with. I want you in and around my first team. I want to get that one-on-one time with you and really coach you into the players that, I think you can really, really be. So I do think that those reports of him being an inverted fullback, they bode well for the future, because it shows that he's thinking about, how do I integrate some of these guys? How do I bring them through? How do I ensure that they've got the right development to really come in and be a part of Arsenal's future? So
I think it's even one to look at. Like when you look at someone like Phil Foden at City, he never went on loan. I think it's a tough one. Some of them they choose to keep around. Some they think they might benefit from being out. I think even Cole Palmer when he was at City, I don't think Cole Palmer ever went on loan.
no, I think he asked for a loan as well this summer, and they actually said no, decided they were going to sell him. So,
so yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and the final point I wanted to touch on just before we go into listeners' questions, right? So, as I said, we like to do the to review the tapes, and I think Vic, we put out a poll yesterday. Who do we want people? Who do people want us to do a scouting piece on? And Victor Gyokeres was by far and away the most popular name that's put forward there. So, and I'm not surprised, because one of the reasons why I wanted to discuss this was that we've seen reliable reports now that he is, firmly on the list of strikers. I'm seeing, reports that Arsenal are firmly or ahead, in the race. They're looking to bring this guy in, etc. There's reports out there about Victor Osimhen as well. Not really heard too much since the AFCON about that, but it looks like this Gyokeres guy playing for Sporting, bit of atypical route to the limelight, I would say, coming through, I think it's Brighton's academy and all of this stuff, going out on loan to Swansea, going out on to Coventry and all of this stuff, and finally getting into sort of a top-ish league in Portugal at the age of 25 for 20 million euro is not necessarily the route that you would see. However, he's performing at a ridiculous rate. I think he scored 36 goals in like 35 appearances. There's 10 assists there as well, something like that. So I think he's actually the most prolific striker in Europe at the moment. Obviously playing in Portugal and playing in the Europa League. I think they got knocked out by Atalanta, though I did watch that match. And this guy he's a bit of an enigma to me. I'm not going to lie, he's a bit of an enigma because I watch him and he clearly has talent. I look at his ability to bring the ball into his control with his back to goal, bring other people into play. The game against Atalanta is a very nice assist. Defender, right up against him, he's able to control it, play a nice ball around the corner. I think it's Pedro Gonçalves runs onto it and slots it past the keeper. If you watch all the comps, there's loads of moments of quality like this. But then you look at the league, and I don't want to, scare people, but if I look at the list of all-time top scorers in the Portuguese league, it's a scary list. It's a very scary list. So you're kind of questioning the quality of this league and how how this would translate. Because I think the imports from Portugal have been quite successful. If you look at the likes of Bernardo Silva, you look at Bruno Fernandes, whatever you might think about that guy, he's come from Portugal. Pedro Neto has come from Portugal. Ruben Neves has come from Portugal. João Moutinho. I think they bought him from France actually, rather than Portugal, but he done his development in Portugal. So a lot of these imports they've done quite well. But I look at I look at this and it's like Mehdi Taremi, top 10 all-time scorers in the Portuguese league. Jonas, top 4. Jardel, and that's from a long while ago. Nuno Gomez, and some of these guys, and it's like Jackson Martinez is in the top 12. Musa Marega, top 13. Bastos and Simao and some of these guys, have got all-time top scorer records, and it's kind of a scary list, of guys who have really been slapping up that league. Not necessarily the highest quality strikers, So, what are your thoughts on this Gyokeres link? Is this someone that you can see coming in, doing a job at Arsenal, being really like an uncovered gem?
I'm gonna be totally honest with you. I'm 50% of the way there just for the celebration alone. Just for the celebration has me on side because that celebration is brazy. That is the sort of thing. If he's half as good as that celebration, he's gonna have a good career in England. So to be totally honest, I don't want to talk too much on him. I don't have a big sample size. I've not watched him very extensively at all. I've only really seen a lot of clips and highlights. But what I do like is that I love his ball striking. I love his, with Arteta so far, I think throughout his time, what's evident is that he's wanted a physical presence up top, which is even why a lot of us have started to warm to Havertz as a bit of a 9, just because of that ability to hold up, the ability to run channels, the ability to link. So I think he's a good physical presence. He seems to have good fundamentals. It's only really Jesus we've targeted that wasn't above 6 foot. When you think of Vlahovic, Isak, Tammy Abraham, if you go all the way back, even if you look at Osimhen now as well. So I think a big 6 foot plus striker has always been on the agenda because of how we move and the ability to occupy people and then act as a bit of a foil from people to play for. Where I would be, I don't know if concerned is the right word, but some slight observations is that a lot of his goals seem to be in big open spaces, and I'm always, when I'm watching these guys, I'm trying to imagine them in Arsenal's game model where how we start. Our centre backs are pretty much 35-40 yards from goal. The striker is in a congested area where there's like 6-7 defenders around him. How do you handle that? Is your touch good? Is your ball reception good in that area? Do you have the ability to, and he looks like he has the ability to spin, get shots off quite quickly off either foot. He looks strong enough, looks decent in the air. So he looks like he ticks quite a few boxes, but at the same time, you're asking yourself, this guy didn't necessarily set the world alight at Coventry and moving to Portugal at the age of 25, obviously, albeit for 25 mil, which is, for a Portuguese club to spend 25 mil on you, they do seem to believe in you. But yeah, it's just a few question marks hanging over, not necessarily from what I'm seeing, just that ability to translate what I'm seeing, which I think has been good so far, but into what would potentially be in England, and for a top team playing against deep blocks most weeks. So I don't know is essentially my answer, but I do like the fundamentals, and yeah, he has me hooked on the celebration. So boy, if he can, if he is the guy that we want to go, and if he does bang, there's potential there. We always speak about strikers tend to peak late, so maybe he's just one of those who has sort of started to hit his stride now into his mid-20s, into his hopefully heading into the late 20s. So um, I do like him. I do like him. I probably need to still watch a bit more. Although I'm not down for paying 100 mil for someone from Portugal, playing in Portugal after one season as well.
Mm.
That's a bit. I know I think it's 85 million pounds. So that's 100 mil, but still try and get that down if
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So, I think one point that I would like to highlight, TouchyGooners reviews the tape. So that will be the first scouting piece that we do this international break. And I think we'll release that one for free for you guys to watch. If you like them, you can subscribe to the Patreon and be able to view all of the other scouting videos that we do. We've done extensive scouting. We did them for Fabio Vieira. We told you what that guy was going to bring. We did it for Gabriel Jesus. We told you what that guy was going to bring. We did it for a lot of signings that we made. And I think, if you go back and watch the tapes, I think, our reports were pretty accurate. Our reports were pretty accurate. So, that is one that you should look out for and try not to miss. As I said, there's 600 of you watching live. So if you are not following us, make sure you hit that follow button. We put out polls, we put out questions, put out mini clips, put out conversation starters, and just generally drop great content on all the socials. So make sure you follow at TouchyGooners across the board. So we do have some listeners' questions before we wrap up today. So let's go through some of those. So Laka Stina Blackstenius 2024 Ballon d'Or soon. He asks, would you take Adeyemi at Arsenal, considering we need more absolute speed demons?
Is he a proper winger, or is he like I don't really, because when
I
I've
feel
watched
like
him,
he's a bit of a striker.
yeah, I think when I saw him at Salzburg before Dortmund bought him, he looked like more of a second striker to me. So if he could play as a touchline winger, he is very fast, by the way, and I do agree. We need some more speed on the wings. We need more 1v1 demons. But I don't have enough data on him. I'll have to admit. So, but I would like a 1v1 guy with pace who can, beat his man on the inside and on the outside, who can stretch, running behind. A lot of us have spoken about Pedro Neto previously, but I'll have to admit, after this latest injury, I think I have gone off, not because I don't rate the player, but just because I don't think, one, we can't be spending 80 million on someone who has serious availability issues. And also, to be fair, I don't necessarily think it needs to be someone who's overly established. It just needs to be a profile similar that can take minutes off Martinelli and Saka where necessary. Because obviously, whilst I think Trossard has been a decent overall signing, I really don't like him out wide, just because he alters the dynamics of what we want to do too much. He doesn't want to be out there. He can't beat someone for pace, doesn't have the ability to go 1v1. So, and when we rely so much on our wingers to break open the game for us, I think for me, it's a profile that is just as essential as a striker for me. That's where the two big signings for me in the summer need to go. Well, actually, maybe not big signing. If you wanted to buy a prospect who can maybe, learn under. So obviously, I know there's been talk of Nico Williams, who I believe has a 43 million pound release clause at Bilbao. He seems to be able to both-footed, can play on both sides. That's the sort of option maybe we should be looking at as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think that point is really right. And I think, in the striker that we sign, I would like them to have, high level speed as well. So that, you're not just relying on the winger or your wingers, to bring that transitional threat, that in behind threat, So on that point around Trossard and Jesus, Havertz is probably deceptively
Quite
quick,
quick. Yeah, yeah.
quicker than what you would expect for a guy of that height. But I think we probably need more top level speed of that Martinelli ilk. So, Adeyemi is an interesting proposition, because I think a few years ago he was definitely like highly sought after, but I'm not sure that the Dortmund spell has probably gone as well as people would have expected. I see he's only scored like 8 league goals or something, but he's only made, I think, 39 league appearances for Dortmund as well. So maybe one to watch. I don't know if I'm that high on Adeyemi. To be honest, I don't know if I'm that high on him. I think that's someone we'd need to ask German Dan about. He can give us some insight from his inside sources in Germany about Adeyemi and what the future might look like, what maybe some of the people at Dortmund think about him as well. So moving on to the next question. This is from Camtana25. David Raya is his name on Twitter. He says, why does a certain bald Dutch manager keep on talking about us?
Oh my God, he needs to let it go. Like, he needs to seriously get a grip every day. Like, he really talks about that Arsenal game as if they were in that game. So first and foremost, we need to clarify, they were under severe duress that game, Manchester United. They scored a goal, which was on the break. We came back and then we pummeled them for pretty much the whole game. He's saying that they should have had a penalty in that game, I think, for Gabriel and Højlund, which wasn't a penalty. Then he's talking about an offside goal, which was offside, hence why it got disallowed. So he's trying to argue that VAR was incorrect and that, I don't know, but it was offside. And then we scored the winner through Rice, and he's saying that Rice goal was a foul. He's very, very obsessive. I think for me, he just needs to take a closer look at his team and why his team seems to get outshot and outpossession by nearly every team in the league that they play. He needs to take a closer look at inwards, why you're now relying on an 18-year-old to try and solve a lot of your problems, bearing in mind you spent the best part of almost 500 mil in your 2 years at Man United. So that obsession, like, he definitely has delusions of grandeur. Wherever he is, he thinks he's better than he is. He thinks his team is unlucky, which is something I can't really respect. One thing I like about Arteta is that when we were crap, he never minced his words to say we need to improve. Like, we need to get better. He didn't deflect. He didn't try to say X or Y were unlucky. He just said we need to get better. So my advice on that board 7-0 egg at United is that help your team get better and stop looking at what we're doing, bro, because we up. You man are battling with them mid-table guys down there. So yeah, man, fix up.
He's a disgusting individual, man. I'm sorry. He's actually just a disgusting individual, because like, I couldn't believe that he made those comments after you've just won a game against Liverpool. Like, why are you bringing us up?
Why are we on your mind?
Why are we talking like it's literally rent free? This is a game that was game week 4. Yeah, and the funny thing was that the question posed was that, could this really kick on and kickstart your season? Right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got 10 games left of the season. Why are you talking about a game from 24 game weeks ago? Yeah, that's over half the season has been played since that game, and you're talking about that could have kickstarted your season.
He had one night with Ruby Rose, and he's not letting anybody forget about it, boy. He's reminding us all, bro. He's reminding us all, let it go, man, let it go.
And I think this is sort of, and this is why I don't really like the guy. Like, obviously, he manages Man United, this, that, and the other. Like, we've had Ole, we've had Mourinho, we've had Van Gaal, etc., and David Moyes, and it's like, I don't really care too much about them. Like, they don't really piss me off that much. Like, when you see Ole smiling in his post-match pressers, you can just sort of laugh at him. But the thing that really annoys me is that I feel like, when people have imposter syndrome, right, but it's almost like the opposite, that, oh, you're probably better than what you think you are. I think Van Gaal is the opposite, that he thinks he's so sick, but he's not. Do you get what I mean? Like, it's very delusional. And, the point that you made about the comments about Arteta saying we need to improve, I think even when we beat Liverpool, I think we beat them 2-1 when Reece Nelson, Lacazette scored, but they had us under duress that match. And when you look at the post-match comments, Arteta's like, he's still giving them respect and saying, look at the gap between the two teams. We were able to match their intensity today, but you know, they have way more quality than us. We can get to that level, and he's acknowledging that. Yeah, fine, we won a game, but he's not getting carried away and now saying, you know, some of the stuff that I've seen Ten Hag say, that, oh, we can beat anyone, this that, and the other. Well, why are you getting outplayed by Sheffield United? You know, why are you not beating everyone then? Do you get what I mean? If you're this good, why are you always talking about, like, you know, how you could have done this, you could have done that? Excuses, we've had injuries, we've had this, we've had that, you know. So I think when it comes down to it, he really needs to take a look in the mirror, start taking a lot more responsibility for some of the performances that we're seeing, and stop talking about Arsenal, because it actually doesn't paint him in a very good light, personally.
It's given obsessed. It's really given obsessed.
100%, man, 100%. So looking at this, Yonko Abs Tranquilo, he says Kivior has been consistently playing since Dubai, but Tommy is back in full training now. Would you start Tommy straight away at the Etihad, or does he have to fight for his place / become match fit?
Yeah, second option. I think Tommy at his best obviously would definitely be an option over Kivior, but I think sometimes when someone's in a state of flow and they've got that run going, you want to keep it going, like, do you know what I mean? So I don't think there's any reason personally to take Kivior out. I would keep him in for that Man City game. Maybe 3 days later we rotate and then we assess after that. But I don't think the back four that we pretty much run with since the start of the year, I think has been very, very good. It's been top. It's given away nothing most games. And I think to talk about the player himself, I think, you know, I think Kivior got a bit of a rough deal because he didn't play a lot to start with at all. Do you know what I mean? So we're seeing this is the first consistent run that he's had going, and I think he's done well. That's not to say that maybe there might be doubts about could we potentially do better there, but I think overall, I think you've got to give him props. I think he's been calm. I think he's been decent overall, man. So, and I think it's good to reward that with consistency, and let him continue to build that relationship. So, I'd imagine it's probably going to be Bernardo Silva or Foden out on the right when we start against City. So I don't think they're the sort of guys that are going to take him down on the outside. Do you know what I mean? So they're both going to want to come back inside on their stronger foot. So yeah, I say keep him in.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's the wise decision. I would do that as well. And maybe, you know, that's what when we talk about finishes, a Tomiyasu, a Zinchenko or something can come off the bench to shut the game down. Hopefully, if it's going our way. So Jojo Tech Johnny, he says, does Timber displace White when he's back to full fitness?
I mean, firstly, that's a long way away. Firstly, get fit and stay fit, my guy. But secondly, I think we always need to, and we've spoken about it before. I just think us Arsenal fans, especially, we have an obsession with set 11s where we need to get comfortable, especially with, you know, certain areas of the team of there being constant rotation. You know, in an ideal world, we would have seen more fullback rotation this morning. You know, I remember reading this season. Sorry, I remember reading an Athletic article, the one about Ben White, where they were saying, you know, he had already played well over 3,000 minutes last season, and they were wary about that, which is why Timber was bought. But in essence, because Timber then got done his ACL and Tomiyasu's been injured, Ben White has already done over 3,000 minutes again this season. Do you know what I mean? And that's not really conceivable. So it's not really ideal. In an ideal world, you split it. I think you've spoken about it, or was it Lewis before, where, you know, City, a lot of their players balance like 2,500 minutes sort of shared between the system, between a lot of them. And I think ideally that's the point you want to get to, because at that point, right, nobody's burnt out, everyone's match fit, everyone's played a consistent amount of minutes, so you can chop and change ideally as you like, because no one's been in the cold for a long period of time. And you know, I know he's played a lot this season, but remember, we've always spoken previously about Phil Foden being left out on the bench for like 2 months straight. Like, do you know what I mean? So we just need to get, as a fan base, comfortable with things. No such thing as a set 11, bar maybe a few. You know, naturally, is always going to play, but yeah. So we just need to get comfortable with that consistent rotation.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. And I think, you know, if Timber can come in and take some minutes at the end of games for Ben White, that's only good. That's only going to be good for the team, both getting, you know, fitness into his legs and also ensure Ben White doesn't get burnt out. You know, and you know, when you talk about the Luton game, and I think there's a couple other home games where you'd be looking to rotate maybe 2 or 4 or 5. Those would be certain games that you would look to do that as well. So I don't think he fully replaces Ben White, but I think they can be good fours for each other personally. So um, Ash and As Sohao 11, he says, "Do you believe Arteta sets us up differently in Europe compared to the league? If so, why does he do it?"
I'm not sold on that line of thinking yet. I think predominantly he still wants to do similar stuff. I think people might reference the Porto game, right? Because I think they did a good job in nullifying us. But overall, I think he predominantly wants to play the same. You look at all of the group games, we went out to win, we scored a lot of goals, home wins against PSV, Lons, we put 10 goals in those 2 games alone, beat Sevilla home and away. So I don't think I'm not convinced on that line of thinking yet. Maybe if I see how we set up against Bayern and it's markedly pragmatic, maybe I assess differently. But I think broadly he's trying to do the same. I just think Porto were one of those tricky teams that know how to nullify you and have a good mid block to be able to negate some of your strengths. I even saw in the league, I think they've only conceded 18 league goals in the Portuguese league. I think they have one of the best XGs against in the Champions League this season. I think just after us essentially. So I just think it was a team that were probably one that probably people didn't give enough credit, probably where it was due. So, and I just think it was one of those teams that, were set up in a way to properly negate your strengths while still maintaining a transition threat. So, props to them. I don't think we're being set up overly different so far, but maybe that might change. So let's see.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I don't necessarily mind us being a bit more conservative. In the Champions League, because it was one of the criticisms that I had against Wenger in those final years, is that when we were conservative, we got to the final. It was the one time where we actually took defense seriously in Europe. Didn't give much up. I know we didn't concede a goal in the entire knockout stages until the final, and I really believe that being defensively resolute is super key. Keeping the obviously in the old system, keeping the away goals down and being able to score and win your games at home. So I think if we're able to sort of replicate that methodology of keeping a score down away from home and winning your home games, that can bode you really, really well for the Champions League. So looking at this, where you've got Bayern Munich come in there and they don't have any fans, that's an opportunity to really, really make the home game count. And if you are able to shut them out at home, maybe take a 1 or 2 goal lead, going to the Allianz, you've put yourself in a very good position with that. So yeah, I think I think being conservative in the Champions League might be the move. So Elliot online, he's asked thoughts on an ESR sale if we were to bag Frankie de Jong.
No, I can't do it, bro. Listen, you're speaking to the wrong person. I have too many stocks in Emil Smith Rowe to dash them in. Now you could say I'm deluded, especially as he's not been heavily involved this season, even when fit. But I just can't do it. I can't do it, bro. I'm not there, man. If he's gonna go down, I'm going down with the ship. You're gonna have to take me out. I'm gonna be dragging and kicking whilst kicked out. So I can't do it, man. Even though Frankie de Jong is a profile I would love at the club, and I could imagine him and Declan Rice being a very, very sick partnership together. So yes to the player, no to doing it for ESR.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm not selling ESR for nothing, man. I'm 100% going down with that ship. I'm 100% going down with that ship. Really. So Baitface Nate, he says, could you predict our last 15 games? I'm not doing that. I'm just not going to do that. We're going game by game. We're going game by game. Mr. K Giampi, he says, who do you think would have had the best Arsenal career if it wasn't marred with injuries? That's Eduardo, Diaby, Wilshere, Rosicky, and Walcott. I'm going Wilshere. I think he's the most talented.
Yeah, I'm going Wilshere. I thought Eduardo was always a bit overhyped personally. Similarly with Diaby, who I thought was a good talent. Walcott, I think he maxed out the most out of his career. I'm not sure that you were going to get much more. So it would be between Wilshere and Rosicky. Now, I always liked Rosicky when he was fit, but he was injury prone. But Wilshere, you know, you got to remember, I think Jack Wilshere's still only like 31, 32. Like in an alternative universe, that guy could be Arsenal's captain right now. Do you know what I
Right
mean? So
now, still hooping
literally
out.
right now.
Still
So
hooping out.
so that one upsets me because I loved that player. And again, when we talk about a profile in midfield, about someone who can help build, someone who can operate high in the pockets, I think Wilshere would have been another ideal partner for Rice as well. Right now, I think that would have been a sick partnership.
In that left eight, just
Oh,
jugging, just jugging,
drop in
jugging.
shoulder, Jinky, through balls to Martinelli. I could see it.
Yeah, that one would have been nice, man. That would have been very nice. And I think Diaby probably one of the most overrated dots. I think he was talented, but
Yeah.
for me, he was a really frustrating player whenever he was fit, to be honest. So
Yeah.
I think people remember the nice stuff about Diaby, and forget they sort of romanticize him a little bit.
They're romanticizing Anfield. That's what they're doing.
100%, 100%. Last question from TRZY. He says, how many minutes is Arteta going to give ESR from now till the end of the season? They're killing me with this one.
Man.
I'm betting less than 100 minutes altogether is what he said.
So. I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's painful.
It's painful. Bruv, I can't do it, man.
Yeah. The thing is with this, right, is it's something that I've said in a group chat, right? But like now I'm losing faith ever so slightly more and more, right? Because I think football really changes quickly. It really does change quickly. 2 months ago, if we said that, people are going to be saying, Kirill stolen Zinchenko's chain, we don't need Zinchenko anymore, this, that, and the other, I would say you're mad, because 2 months ago, Kirill's getting hooked at halftime at Fulham. You get what I'm saying? But, we've been forced into some changes there, and now Kirill looks like he's a strong part of the team. He's been part of the team in probably our best run of the season, winning 8 games in a row, winning the game in the Champions League and all of this stuff. So scoring countless goals. So for me, I don't want to, sort of lock anything off, because if ESR comes off the bench against Man City, for instance, contributes to a winning goal, say, for instance, he can then start the next game at Luton. If he then gives us a good performance against Luton, not necessarily a goal, he can then start the next game after that. So football changes quickly. But the thing that's really bothering me is that, will we see him come off the bench with enough time to impact the game? That's the main question mark.
He's not getting the opportunities now.
Exactly.
Now he's fit. So yeah.
So it's a worrying one. It's a worrying one. So we'll just have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that one.
We live to fight another day, man.
We do. I think we'll leave it there. It's been a good pod. I was a bit, nervous coming into this. I was like, I don't know if there's that many things to talk about with Arsenal, but I think we got there in the end. Really, there's always something going on in the Arsenal world that we can chat about. 758 people watching this live.
Big up, man.
So big up you lot, much appreciated. As I said, if you're watching this on Twitter, make sure you drop us a follow. We put out loads of content, loads of combo starters. We tend to be generally quite positive about Arsenal, but if you see someone losing their mind, don't hold it against us. There's multiple people on the account. As I said, later this week, make sure you watch out for the Victor Gyokeres scouting piece. That one will put out not just to patrons, but we'll give that free access to everyone. If you do like that, feel free to subscribe for as little as £3 a month, because we won't be stopping there. We've got a long list of players that we want to cover. We've got more shows, some tactical pieces. We do post-match reactions on there, player ratings, and all of this good stuff that comes out to the patrons, extra content, not just this podcast. So, Seun, thank you for joining me. I'm happy to be back on hosting duty. And we'll catch you guys with the Gyokeres scouting piece. That'll be the next bit of content we put out. So peace.
Peace.